Okay, so our last Hindu building is actually Angkor Wat, and we're going to see how it is a blend of Hindu and Buddhist architecture, as well as how the building itself and some of the images on it convey power. So Angkor Wat is in Cambodia, so you can see it's on the southern tip of this peninsula. And so there is a series of UNESCO videos. I have the link for it here at the very bottom. There's actually 3 different videos. The first one is just views, which I would highly recommend. This is one of the largest Hindu temples or complexes in the world. I think it's actually one of the largest religious complexes in the world. And so it's got some amazing views and ways to experience it that you don't normally get to see, even if you were to actually get to go to Angkor Wat. The second video has some of the entrances, and we'll see some close-up images of this. And then the third one has some commentary, which is kind of like a general overview, but it also does a lot about talking about restoration as well as what's happening now post-war Cambodia. So Angkor Wat was first, like I said, a Hindu temple, and then it later became Buddhist. The temple was built by the Khmer king Surivarman II in the 12th century in present-day Angkor, which is the capital of Khmer Empire. This was a temple that was dedicated to Hinduism, then later Buddhism, when we get Surivarman VII. But then it also eventually became his mausoleum. So Surivarman II is also buried here. And in Cambodia, they had a Shiva tradition, but this one is kind of unique. And so instead of it being a Shiva temple, it's actually dedicated to Vishnu, the protector, which makes sense, right? Thinking about that this is a temple that was built by a ruler. So the ruler sees themselves as a protector. So it makes sense that their temple is also for a protector. So I don't think there's anything else that, looking at the slide going, I think I've talked about all of this stuff, right? So something interesting to know about the temple is it is, once again, an entire complex, and you might see that it's surrounded by water. But this is not natural water, right? This is carved out man-made water. So what is the function of this water, right? It protects the temple complex. You'll notice that there is a central road to get into it, and so that's easily to be defendable, right? But also you could take boats and move objects and things around into it quite easily as well. Transport goods. So here is the plan for it and thinking about how it's organized. So at the beginning of our discussion on Hinduism, we talked about how it is often things are based on a mandala. So this is a symmetrical design, right? So the temple itself is a symmetrical design. And so it has 4 equal quadrants. And you can see that the entire complex is orientated on cardinal directions. So there is a west side, an east side, a north and south. And so that aligns with, the calendar and the cosmos. So we haven't looked at Borador yet. Borador is a Buddhist temple, but you can tell that both of them are raised on platforms, and you can see that they are symmetrical. All right, so I think this is an image that you have in your image set as well. So we can see that these peaks, right, these peaks represent the 5 mountaintops where the gods live, and primarily Mount Meru in the Himalayas, right? This is the mythical home of the Hindu gods. And this mountain is an axis mundi, which connects the heavens and the earth. It makes sense that the mountain would symbolize that, right? Where it reaches its peak, its point, towards the heavens, and then, the wideness as it connects to the earth. So why would a ruler build one of the largest temples to the gods, right? So one, it would legitimize his claim to political office, right? It would lay claims to him being a protector of the people and giving him power from the gods themselves. It would prove that the gods wanted him to take charge, that he, was not, that the gods didn't support his enemies, that he could harness the energy and the resources to build such a large structure, and also to show that he can exert power over the entire universe. So here's some of the interior architecture of Angkor Wat. Normally we think about the exterior. So you can see the roof is held up with these pilasters with capitals at the top. You can see that there's shallow relief carvings along the entablature at the top. There are several small stupas. Stupas are burial spots, typically for Buddha or for Buddha's followers and important bodhisattvas. And so then we have an interesting image as part of our image set for Angkor Wat, and it's called the Churning of the Ocean Milk. And they only give us a small section of it. I'll show you some other views of it that are a little bit more detailed. But this is an image based on the churning of the ocean milk. Basically, this is a creation story. So this is how the world was created. And so in Hindu mythology, it tells the stories of these churning cosmic oceans. And so in order to obtain Amrita, the nectar of immortal life. So this is a process. So it's suggested that Vishnu and the gods churn this ocean to obtain Amrita, which will guarantee them immortality. So that's what's being depicted in this, is that churning action. So if you notice, there is a kind of like a rod or a staff going through here, and there's this momentous tug of war taking place. And so the action of back and forth is that churning of the ocean. So here is, at the very bottom, is probably a better image of what this image looks like. And so you can see that it's carved along a wall side. And so it has a lot of repetition. The images at the top of the oceans and the tug of war taking place are all identical, and it has symmetrical balance. It's based on registers, so it has different levels, right? And it's done in what we call shallow relief or bas relief. Bas relief is similar to what coins are minted in. So there's just a little indication of three-dimensional form. So on either side of the tug of war, we have Devas and Asuras. And the Devas are the gods, and the Asuras are demons. And they are playing tug of war with this rod, but it's really Naga. It's a serpent. So it's a serpent king. And Naga was spun from Mandora, which represents Vishnu, right? The god that's dedicated at this temple. And so above him, we have all these Asparas. Asparas are these celestial maidens. They're very fertile looking, and they're basically being churned around up in these primordial waters. And so the primordial waters are probably more representational of like semen, right? So sexual intercourse. And so it makes sense that we have these fertile women churning up there as well. So remember, male and female components bring all life. And so it's important to show those connections of those two kinds of energies. And then in the very center, we have Inidra, this Vedic god, coming down from the heavens to catch all of this churning, all of this life force, and to save the world from the destruction of the demons. So here's some images of the gods, right? And so you also have this colossal head here in your image set, and that's an image of Yasovarman the Seventh, and he was the ruler who expanded the Angkor Wat territory, but also he is the one that converted this region into Buddhism rather than just Hinduism. There is a Angkor Thom. Angkor Thom means great city. And so this is located outside of Angkor Wat. And so this is the place where people lived. And so there's colossal gates, right? So that was in some of those videos that I showed you, said at the very beginning that you could look at. And then there's these colossal ruler heads as well. And so here we have Angkor Thom, right? And you can see how it's a lot bigger than Angkor Wat that's at the bottom. And the reason it's bigger is that this would be not a religious center, but this would be the power center as well. So this would be a city, people would live here and then the surrounding territory, right? So here's the southern gate. So you can see the monumental gateway that leads in and out of Angkor Thom, the city. And you can see the relief carvings, and you can see a giant colossal face image here. That second video has some details on that. And so this image that's in our 250 is of Yasovarman the Seventh, and he, like I said, converted people to Buddhism. And so he established Buddhism as the official religion of Angkor. And by the time he came to power, he was already 60, which was really seen as being old during this time. And he devoted his life to meditation and tantra. And so he is actually considered to be a bodhisattva king. And so a bodhisattva is someone who helps people who follow Buddhism obtain enlightenment. So instead of obtaining their own, right, and being released from samsara, they live with the whole purpose of helping others attain this power themselves. And so he's often shown as a living incarnation of Buddha, and he's often shown in characteristic style of a smiling Buddha, which is very typical from other imagery that we've seen. People imagine that he was very similar in his day to what we would consider someone like the Dalai Lama. So he was a religious figure.